I'm Scott Knauss from Red Hat Consulting, here today with Nick Poyant, also of Red Hat Consulting, for our whiteboard session where we're going to be discussing provisioning with Satellite 6. Nick, tell us about provisioning with Satellite 6. What does it give us?
So provisioning is one of the major features of the Satellite 6 product. Once you set up all the back-end components, a user will be able to configure new machines with ease.
It's great. So how does this work? What do we actually have to do? I imagine there's some options we have to get rolling to get things moving.
Yeah, so the first thing the user is going to want to decide is what tool set they're going to use to deploy that new machine. So, the first option being the Hammer CLI, the next would be the Web GUI, and then the third option would be to provision through the Satellite 6 API.
So there's other options, I imagine, that go along with this as well. What do we have to configure to get started?
So when you first log in and you quickly see the variety of different options you have to choose from, you give it a name. The first couple of things you're going to define is, what organization it's going to reside in, what location, and then what platform you'd like to deploy to.
I imagine there are lots of different platforms we can deploy to. What are our options there?
As you know, all the data centers, are unique and different. So whether your data center consists of physical machines, you have a virtualization infrastructure, or your servers live within the cloud space, Satellite 6 is flexible enough to be able to provision to any environment that you may be a part of.
So naturally, we can deploy to Red Hat Enterprise Virtualization. Let's use that as our example today and talk about that. What do we have to do to start deploying a new instance out to Red Hat Virtualization?
Sure. So the first thing you're going to want to do is choose the compute resource that's associated with Red Hat Virtualization. From there, you're going to want to view which compute profiles are associated with that resource.
Compute profiles. That sounds like a template kind of thing. What is that going to give us?
Right. So they're preset machine types that essentially define what your base or starting point for CPU and memory is going to be.
Okay. And where do we go from there? What's next?
So now you're going to want to define the content and the configuration of that new host. You can define manually, where those particular content views are coming from, or where my configuration is. If you have a more more defined environment, you could choose to be a part of a host group, and that will allow you to inherit some common configuration if you're part of a broader package of machines.
Okay, so content and configuration there. Are we locked into that, or can we customize them?
Right. So yeah, every machine has the capability to be as common as you like or as unique as you need it to be. Another core feature of Satellite 6 is that it has Puppet built into it. And once you have your Puppet modules loaded into your content views, and as long as that's available to Satellite, you could pick and choose which Puppet classes you want to apply to each new machine you want to deploy. Okay,
so there's a list of Puppet modules. We probably write some of our own custom Puppet modules to create machines exactly the way we need them to be, correct?
Yes.
That's awesome. So what's our next step here? We've got our profile picked out. We've got our compute resources. We've got some Puppet configurations to customize it. Where do we go from here? What's the next step?
So the next phase of the workflow is we're going to define how our network looks. So, we're going to define what device we want it to attach to, a device name, what subnet we want to provision to, and what DNS domain we want to be a part of.
Okay. So, and then the next step would be, operating system here. What do we do from there?
Right. So we're going to choose, what type of operating system we want to deploy to the new platform.
Well, Red Hat Linux, of course.
Absolutely. So as a part of that operating system, you have a couple of additional core settings that you want to define. So for that RHEL operating system we're getting ready to deploy, we're going to choose where's that installation media coming from. And once you have that defined, you're going to choose, what type of partition table that new machine is going to get. And then from there, you're also going to define what provisioning templates you're going to use. So those will contain your kickstarts and any pre and post configuration scripts that you choose to customize your machine with.
Okay, so we've got everything all configured out now. We've got our networking, we've got our partitions. What's the last step? How do we make this thing appear and do some work for us?
All right, so when you click that submit button and that new machine provisions and creates the base shell on the Red Hat Virtualization platform, it's going to reach out to DHCP and see if it has a reservation or define an IP back to that host. It's going to boot up off of a PXE boot process, and then it's going to reach out to your satellite TFTP server. to pull down the initial image, and then from there it's going to kickstart your machine, get that base initial configuration up and running, and then it's going to reach out and validate that your host addresses are correct within DNS.
That's awesome. So that's Red Hat Satellite 6 provisioning in a nutshell. For more questions, contact your account executive. Red Hat Consulting can be happy to come out and do a discovery session for you to help you understand what Red Hat Consulting can bring to the table to help you out today. For other questions, check out redhat.com/consulting. Thank you for joining us.